If we're so keen on being happy, why do we spend so much time in the dark watching actors as brilliant as you portraying miserable creatures? What's going on there?
I mean, any great novel that I can think of is actually drawing a character or a narrative in such a way that is so brutally honest, in a way that you thought, oh God, I never would have put it that way, but that's it. All of a sudden you come across it in a book in such a way that you're relieved that somebody actually got it down on paper, and you're grateful because it is that awful or that brutal, therefore that memorable.
Why do tragedies get etched in our memories? The entire concept of a tragic artist is itself a myth. Kurt Cobain, who was more of a reluctant rock star, probably the face of alienation and angst, is deeply remembered not just for his art but also for his chaotic and toxic relationship with drugs, life and depression. He talked about his tragedy being the driving force to pick his guitar. Calling himself rhythmically retarded, being in the business of rhythm, Cobain always went towards making a statement either through his words or through his tragedies. But why do tragedies fascinate people? Just because they're exceptions? Because not everyone goes through a deep-rooted tragedy or an emotion in either extremes. From euphoric joys to draining tragedies fascinates us because most of the world is revolving around mediocre feelings and average emotions. And when we see a source where we can derive our emotions from, it inherently becomes fascinating to us. But somehow, the enigma around it never really goes away. The concept of tragedy in art is as old as time itself. It's not something to have originated like a spark or a trend, but rather it evolved with time. Greek tragedies still inspire artists and writers to experiment with their creations, and their audience still stays kind to them as they always have been in history. It's fair to say that an artist feels more emotions than an average mind can take, probably on obnoxious levels. But the ways in which a tragedy works around his head is what remains a mystery, even to the artist himself. Albert Camus talks about a post-war writer who, after finishing his book, committed suicide to attract attention to his book. He was successful in doing that, of course, but the book turned out to be a farce. So if the story is any true, then it means tragedy might inspire good art, but then it's the expression of the art that draws people closer to it. It's not always the enigma around the tragedy that works. Eventually, it's the art that makes an artist. What does tragedy mean to you? Do you think it becomes easier to create art out of tragedy, or it's the enigma?
Preacher told me something I didn't know before. It ain't rock bottom, but it's close to the hole. It ain't rock bottom, but it's close to the hole.